reasons that we put this together is, personally, you know, I've gone to so many funerals for suicide in the last 5 years with my son primarily, but probably 15. And at one point or another, you kind of look at the situations that you end up in, and you think, you know, if there's so many of these things, and none of them really directly related to me or my family, but I'm attending these funerals, you know, maybe God's telling you should probably do something about it, or get involved in some way. So that's really my motivation for doing this. But as I put down I just started jotting some of the names of the folks that I've gone to their funerals, and it's really kind of a stark commentary on who this affects. A football player at the age of 18, just out of high school. I'm a realtor. I sell a house to a guy. 6 months later, he commits suicide in his bathroom. Afterwards, he worked with my son. Age 30, former Marine. A childhood friend of mine in his early 50s. A neighbor. I got a call one day and was told to look out my back window, and she had hung herself in her backyard. And I could see it from my back porch. So a couple of phone calls that I've gotten being on council, people with maybe cryptic or not so cryptic messages about, you know, their desire to kill themselves. And so I made phone calls in each of those situations, one to the individual, one to some officials to make a welfare check. Lake Orion, there were 2 high school students back to back that I had attended. So again, it just kind of has peppered my life for some reason. And again, I have a small window of opportunity being in the public's eye for a little bit, and I thought it's a good opportunity for me to be proactive and at least start a conversation here in the city of Troy. One morning, I woke up at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was right after a friend of mine had placed something on Facebook, and I had made a welfare call to him, and it happened to be Dennis Leggio, who you'll meet here in just a few minutes. And he was on Channel 2 and was giving his presentation, and it really struck a chord with me, so I reached out to Dennis, and right away Dennis was willing and accepting of trying to put this program together for us. So Dennis is here tonight, and that'll be the lion's share of the business end of the program, but he's got a very compelling story, and I'll let him obviously talk best about it. Again, we know that there's so many factors involved with suicide, PTSD with soldiers. We've got, you know, bullying, people being isolated from their peers. Up in my age group, loss of job, marriages dissolve, all those sorts of things. So I mean, it attacks people in so many different areas. And again, one of the things that as I've gone to some of these funerals, again, being more or less an outsider looking in, the devastation that there is with the families that are involved is sometimes more than you can take. You know, people question, you know, how did this happen? How did I miss the signs? How could I have prevented it? And I don't know if there's really any cut and dry answers with all of that. The families are left with unanswerable questions. And there's a mental health aspect of this, I know. There's a spiritual aspect of this. And that's why we've assembled the panel that we have here tonight. And hopefully we'll get some insights from them as we go through the evening as well, and they can help answer some questions for us. My son just showed up. I appreciate him coming. Former soldier, and I'm not sure if he wants me to say this, but you know, suffers from some PTSD. And some of these funerals that we've gone to have been military funerals. And I always make it a point to go out after these funerals with him and you know, have a good strong chat. You know, he means something to people. All these people mean something to somebody. So the panel, let's talk about the panel a little bit. We've got our esteemed mayor, Dane Slayer, here with us tonight. Dane is going to talk a little bit about some experience that he has as a former police officer, going on calls to some of these situations, and as well as some more personal things. We've got Sarah Shiasis. She is a teen suicide survivor, and we're thankful that she's here, and we're thankful that she's here to tell her story for us. So we have the privilege of hearing her. Bethany Baker is Councilman Baker's, who's in the front row's wife, and she is a family therapist and is going to give us some insights and some help there. And there's all kinds of resources at the back table, as you can see. Marcy Snevice, I had her phonetically spell that for me so that we could get that right. She is a counselor at ThriveWorks, again, a professional that can give us some insight. Amelia Leto from Common Ground, she's a crisis line operator, very important position that she holds. And Reverend Susan Anslow Williams from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, again, understanding that there's a spiritual aspect often with these types of things, and we like to try to draw those perspectives in as well. So. Without further ado, I'll introduce Dennis Leggio. Dennis, again, his story is very compelling and has put a lot of it to music, so we'll get entertained and educated all at once. Dennis, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for putting this together and teaming up with me, and thanks to the panel for being here, and thanks to you guys for coming out tonight to talk about something that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. This is a very personal cause and mission for me, so I always like to start off by talking about why I do this. This is a picture of me and my dad when I was little. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 14. And my last words to him were in anger. We were riding around in his car, and we were fighting about math, which is something that happened all the time because it was my worst subject, and my dad was an accountant. So we fought about math all the time. But this time was different. He was screaming at the top of his lungs, and that had never happened before. We'd get into arguments and disagreements, but he would never scream. And so I got angry, and I got scared. And when we got back to his house, I called my mom and I asked her to come and pick me up because I didn't want to spend the rest of the weekend with him. My parents had been divorced for a while. So she pulled up in the driveway, and I ran out the front door and I screamed, "I hate you, and I never want to see you again." That was the last thing that I ever said to him. Over the next couple of months, he tried to call. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't listen to the messages. I didn't call him back. He sent letters in the mail that I never opened. I just ripped them up and threw them out. I was angry. I was 14. I was trying to prove something. I never thought in a million years that I would never see him again. That thought never crossed my mind. But my stepmom called the house one night, and she told our mom that our dad was missing and she didn't know where he was or what he was doing, but that he was acting really strange when he left. So my mom didn't know what to think, didn't know what was going through his head, and she took me and my brother to our grandma's house. And now that he was missing, all I could think about was how sorry I was that I said that stuff to him. I just wanted him to come home. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I wanted everything to go back to normal. And that's what I dreamt when I went to sleep that night. I dreamt that he came home and that we both said I'm sorry and I love you and everything was okay. But when I woke up the next morning, went and sat down for breakfast, I could just feel it in my gut that something was wrong. And when we were done eating, my mom and my grandma told my brother and I that the police had called very early that morning and that they had found our dad and that he wasn't coming home. I remember feeling in that moment like I stepped outside of my body and watched this happen to someone else. There's no way this is real. There's no way he's gone. But it was real, and he was gone forever. And when we found out that it was suicide, I thought that was my fault. Because of what I said. Because I refused to see him. And it didn't matter how many people told me it's not your fault, it's not your fault. That's how I felt. That's what I believed, and that's what I carried with me for at least the next 10 years of my life. And I spent every day of those 10 years trying to pretend like this never happened, or that he never existed, or that he was a coward, and I hated him, and I didn't need him anyway. What I didn't do was talk about it. You learn growing up, especially as a guy, that it's not all right to talk about your feelings. Whatever's going on, whatever happened, you're supposed to suck it up and act tough and move on. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to pretend that everything was okay. I tried to pretend that I felt normal and happy and connected, and I didn't feel any of that stuff. I felt alone. I felt like nobody would ever understand this. I was angry and sad all the time, and the more time that went by, the less I knew why. I did what a lot of people do when they don't understand how to deal with what they're feeling. I turned heavily to drugs and alcohol because I didn't want to feel anything. To me, it made more sense to be numb than to be in pain all the time. And the problem with that, of course, is you can't numb the bad without numbing the good too. And pretty soon, I just felt empty, hopeless, dead inside. And that's when I started thinking about killing myself, because what's the point? This wasn't getting any better. It was getting worse, and if I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life, what's the point? And again, this wasn't something that I talked about. You look at me in pictures from back then, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, I'm doing all of the things that you do in life. People think about depression and they think about suicide and they picture somebody off in a corner somewhere by themselves with their face buried in their hands, and that's just not how it looks all the time. And in fact, I think that's rarely how it looks. I think that we're out there every day trying to pretend like we have it all together when we're falling apart inside. And that's what was happening to me. Things started to change for me one night when I was sitting at home playing my guitar, something that I picked up shortly after my dad died. I bought a cheap used guitar and I started teaching myself how to play, because music was this one thing that made me feel all right. This one place that I could go to and feel all right. So I'm sitting there at home and I'm fumbling around on the guitar, and this melody pops into my head and these chords come together, and I grabbed a notebook and I started writing, and I wasn't even thinking about what I was doing in that moment. But within a few minutes I had written a song about my dad and this loss and everything that I was keeping bottled up inside because of it. And writing this song changed my life. I'm certain that it saved it. It's called No Resolve, and I'd like to share it with you now. This is how you leave me, bleeding where I stand. I've tried so hard to figure out, I've tried to understand what could have been so hopeless and so painful that you felt it had to end. What was that final puzzle piece you couldn't get to fit? be no answers to these questions. Got to carry on and try to live. So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song. Was there something that I could have done? Might have changed your mind. If I told you I loved you and I need you here, would you still be alive? No, I know it's not my fault. I still carry all this guilt and shame inside. So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye. Somehow I hope that you can hear this song. To this song there is no ending. For this pain there's no resolve. Time won't cover up the wounds when you lose someone you love. If I could ask you one last thing, I guess that I would ask you why. I'd ask you why. So goodbye. I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song. I hope that you can hear this song. I hope that you can hear this song. Thanks. So, like I said, writing that song, it put me on a different path. It felt so good to finally let go of some of that stuff that I'd been carrying around inside for so long. I felt like I had finally found a voice and a place for the pain. And I might never find a reason for it, but at least I found this place to put it. And it felt so good to let some of that stuff go. It felt so good to write it out and sing it out, and I kept writing. I wrote a bunch more songs and started a band. We recorded an album, and I spent the next few years traveling around and playing shows and making music with my friends and seeing new places and meeting new people and sleeping on lots of couches and floors. And it was awesome. It was everything that I had ever dreamed about. As far back as I could remember, all I wanted to do was make music. And I was doing it. And I started to feel things that I thought I would never feel again. Connection and purpose and passion and joy, and I thought that was all gone forever. I thought that I would never get through this or get over it. And the truth is, a loss like that at an age like that, you don't get over it. You're never the same. It never goes back to what you knew as normal. But you do get through it. You get through it, and you find hope, and you find what's next. And what was next for me was starting this organization in 2007 because I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to make a difference. Nobody wanted to talk about this. 5 years went by without anybody mentioning his name at Christmas or holidays or birthdays. All the pictures were gone. It's like we all tried to pretend that this man never existed. And I wanted to talk about it. So I started this organization, which I called No Resolve, after the song in honor and memory of my dad. And this is what I do. I go around and I share my story, and I share that song, and I talk about some of the things that I think we all should know to hopefully make a difference. Because right now, suicide is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds. And right now, every 12.7 minutes or so, someone in this country dies by their own hand, leaving behind a lifetime of pain and questions that'll never be answered in any kind of way that makes sense for everyone else who loves them. And so that's why we're here tonight. And I thank you for being here. Because you are now part of this. And the goal tonight is to break down the fear and the shame and the silence and the stigma surrounding suicide and surrounding mental health. And we're gonna try to do that by talking about three things: understanding suicide, how to help a friend or a loved one, and how to help yourself. These are three common misconceptions that you hear about suicide all the time. The first one, that it's selfish or weak. The truth is that suicide is a desperate last act by someone who's consumed by so much emotional and psychological pain that they can't see any other way out. It's not about death, it's about escape. It's about wanting to be out of pain. And it feels selfish to us on the outside. But in their heads and in their hearts, they think they're doing us a favor. Depression causes suicide. Depression is a major risk factor for suicide, along with other mental health disorders or conditions. And most people who die by suicide are struggling with a mental health disorder. But most people with depression do not die by suicide. Most people with depression do not attempt suicide. The third one, you hear it all the time, the media loves to perpetuate. Bullying causes suicide. He was bullied to death. She was bullied to death. That might be the last thing that we see, something that's referred to as a precipitating event. It might be the only thing that we see. But it's never the only thing that's going on. And the point of all of this is that suicide is complicated. There's a lot that goes into it. It happens over time, and it's never one reason, one person, one incident. This is Thomas Joyner's theory on why people die by suicide. This is the current prevailing theory right now. And if you have been affected by suicide in some way, if you've ever thought about it, if you've attempted, if you've lost someone you love to suicide, I encourage you to check out this book. It was a tremendous help for me in understanding what I was going through and what my father may have been struggling with. So it's called Why People Die by Suicide, and that's by Thomas Joyner. So Joyner tells us that there's three things that overlap and go into this. The first one is the feeling or belief that you are alone. The second one is the feeling or belief that you are without purpose or that you're a burden to your loved ones. When those two feelings become beliefs and they overlap for a period of time without relief, that's where thoughts of suicide occur. And this is actually pretty common. A lot of people at some point in their life will at least think about suicide. even if it's just a fleeting thought. Difficult things happen, and we can all get to a point in a place where we feel alone, where we feel disconnected, where we feel that we don't have a purpose. But when those two feelings become beliefs and they overlap with the capability for lethal self-injury, that's where there is a serious suicide attempt or death. Now that last circle, the capability for lethal self-injury, you can get there a couple of different ways. You can be born like that. People who are natural-born thrill seekers, adrenaline junkies, risk takers. But you can also work up to that over time through repeated painful and provocative experiences like alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and previous suicide attempts. How could somebody believe that they're alone? And how could somebody believe that they have no purpose? To understand that, we look at risk factors. The more risk factors that someone has present in their life, the greater chance they have for having those feelings and for those feelings becoming beliefs. Untreated or undiagnosed mental health disorders or conditions, childhood trauma, abuse or neglect, previous attempts, a family history of suicide or mental health disorders, alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and easy access to lethal means such as firearms or a stockpile of drugs. To simplify all of this, people contemplate suicide when their pressure, problems, and pain outweigh their ability to cope with those things. But again, it's important to remember that suicide's not about death. It's about escape, in that it's never one reason, one person, one incident. Warning signs are present in most cases of suicide, so it's important to know these things. It's important to know what to look out for. Because often we don't see this stuff until it's too late. The biggest warning sign is talking about it. Talking about death, dying, or suicide, threatening to do it, joking about it, being preoccupied with death, writing about it all the time. A lot of people who die by suicide will tell someone what they're going to do, but the problem is that they often don't tell the right someone. Other warning signs include talking about feeling hopeless, trapped, or overwhelmed all the time, anger or mood swings that are out of character, withdrawing from friends, family, favorite activities, and giving away prized possessions. When all of these things start to build up, that could mean that someone is in crisis or they're headed for crisis. The challenge we face with the warning signs, of course, is that people who are actively suicidal are doing their best to hide these signs from us. So it's not always easy to see, and some people, different people will see different things. A parent won't see the same things that a teacher will. A teacher won't see the same things that a peer will. So what do you do if you know someone who is in crisis? They have some of those risk factors. They're showing some of those warning signs. You're concerned they might be thinking about suicide. The first thing that you do is to ask if they're thinking about suicide. And you ask it directly. You don't sugarcoat. You don't dance around it. You're not going to put that idea into someone's head if it's not already there. What you're doing is giving them permission to talk about something that they felt like they couldn't say to anyone. So you ask the question. Number 2, let them talk and try to listen without judgment. It's human nature for us to want to fix. So we say things like, it's not that bad, or you have so much to live for, or tomorrow's another day, or think about everyone who will miss you if you're gone. And we say those things and they're coming from a good place, but for someone who is seriously suicidal, it's not helpful. What they hear is another person who doesn't get it. And so we try to just let them talk and try to remember what it's like When you were so overwhelmed with something in your life and you just wanted someone to hear you without offering advice, without offering platitudes or cliches, just think about how good and how rare that is to actually feel heard and listened to without being judged, without being told what to do. Maybe ask a question. How can I help? What do you need? What can I do? Number 3, help them complete a safety plan. I brought some safety plans with me today, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Number 4, involve a mental health professional. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Text START to 741-741. Reach out to any of the resources that are here tonight. Involve a mental health professional. Ask for help right away. This is life and death. Number 5, educate yourself and ask for help for yourself. A lot of times this is something that we try to handle on our own, something that we try to fix by ourselves, and there is still this stigma attached to asking for help or to seeking help from a mental health professional, and we have to erase that because this is serious and because there is no shame in asking for help. So there are resources here tonight. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-TALK. The crisis text chat line is 741-741. You can visit our website, noresolve.org, for more resources, and you can visit the tables and the folks back here tonight. So ask directly about suicide. Let them talk. Help them with a safety plan. Seek the assistance of a mental health professional, and educate yourself and ask for help for yourself through this as well, because it's a lot to carry. Safety planning. Again, I brought some with me here. This is about knowing what to do if and when thoughts of suicide return. Some people have suicidal thoughts once, and then they move through it, and it never happens again. Some people have them throughout their lives. I have had suicidal thoughts throughout my life at different points, and safety planning is about knowing what to do if and when those thoughts return. So there's 6 boxes to fill out, and you can help someone to fill this out when they're feeling well. Number 1, recognize the warning signs. What happens to you when you're heading into crisis? For me, it was always the same and still is the same. My thoughts would start racing. I'd forget to breathe, and I would start fantasizing about escape, just disappearing. So what happens? Know what happens to you. Self-awareness is the first key. Number 2, what are the things that you can do to take your mind off these thoughts? Healthy ways to distract yourself in those moments. I could pick up my guitar and play. I could write my thoughts out in a journal. I could go for a walk. Identify the things that you like to do that can help keep you distracted from those thoughts when they're coming down. Number 3, socialize with friends. The most important thing that you can do when all you want is to be left alone is to go be with someone else. You don't always have to talk about what you're thinking, what you're feeling. You could go bowling, you could go to the movies, you could just hang out. But the important thing is to not be alone, because the longer you sit there by yourself with those thoughts, the darker and more overwhelming they become. Number 4, contact family members or trusted adults for support. So most of what I do is speaking to middle school students and high school students, and we talk about the importance of identifying adults that you can trust in your life to talk to open up to. And I'll be 41 in May, and I still need to identify adults that I can talk to. So, the people that you can go to for advice that have maybe been through something similar, that can kind of help you through what you're struggling with. Write down their names. Number 5, if you've tried all of this and none of it's working, you're still overwhelmed, you're still suicidal, you can't shake these thoughts, it's time to ask for help. It's time to talk to a mental health professional. And again, we have to eliminate the stigma with this. Nobody has a problem going to the doctor if they broke their arm, right? Why do we have a problem going to a doctor if we broke our insides? If you need a referral to a mental health professional, you can call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can visit our website, and you can visit the resource tables back here today, but ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Number 6, keep your environment safe. Folks, this should be common sense, but it's not. If you have a suicidal teenager in the house, or a teenager who is struggling with thoughts of suicide, psychological problems, emotional problems, one of the best things that you can do is to limit their exposure to lethal means. Get rid of the pills, get rid of the booze, get rid of the guns. Means restriction is one of the most effective ways to prevent suicide. So this is safety planning, and I did bring safety plans with me tonight. Safety plans are also available on the website. Okay, this is the part where I talk about how we help ourselves. I would like to preface this section by saying, I do not have it all figured out. I do not have it all together. I am a wreck at times, like everyone else. I struggle with depression and anxiety still. It's part of my life. It's part of my family. It's in my blood. And I struggle in a lot of areas. And so this is how I take care of myself through all of that. I have spent the last 10 years trying to find ways to feel better, ways to feel happier and more connected and less stressed and less depressed and less riddled with anxiety. This is how you practice mental health. Doing at least one thing in each of these circles every day. And the concept here is that one good choice tends to lead to another, just like one bad choice tends to lead to another. I did bring blank versions of this slide, and they're on the table back there, and I'm happy to email them to anyone as well. It's real easy when we're struggling, when we're feeling trapped or hopeless or overwhelmed to self-medicate, to self-harm, to self-destruct. It's very, very easy to get wrapped up in those downward spirals. But this is how you create an upward spiral. And I believe that by making consistent, positive choices, you can feel better over time. It's not always easy. It takes work and it takes practice, but that's the point. It is a practice. So these are my circles. These are the things that I do. Up at the top, for a very important reason, is physical. One of the best things that you can do for your mental health is to take care of your body. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, watching what you eat, and finding some way that you enjoy to move your body every single day. I like to go for walks or runs or some combination of the two, preferably outside, get some, well, not today, but sunshine and vitamin D and fresh air. I like to ride my bike. I started practicing yoga a couple of years ago with a great amount of hesitation because I thought it looked really weird. I'm like, yeah, that is not for me. But then I read about how much it helps with symptoms of depression and symptoms of anxiety and how it can help you just to feel more balanced and centered, and I started giving it a try. I just looked up videos on YouTube and I started in my living room, and that's still mostly what I do today, and I was surprised by how much it helps. And if there is a day that I don't do my yoga practice, I feel it. I can feel it. Emotional, anything that helps you identify, express, or understand what you're feeling can go in this circle. Feelings are real and they are important, and we have to find some way to express them. Can't keep your feelings bottled up inside. It will take you down. I write in a journal almost every day. This is a very simple, effective way to derail the train of anxiety. Just writing out your thoughts can help you understand them, can help take the pressure off, can help you see things from a different perspective, and sometimes it helps me write songs. Music is still my go-to every day. I can't explain how or why this works, but if I'm really struggling with something and I pick that guitar up and I just start running scales or doing anything, really, it changes my energy. Something happens. I can't explain to you what happens, but it works. And it's still my go-to. So if music's not your thing, that's all right. We're all creative in some way. Find what it is that moves you and helps you to express what you're feeling. Talk to someone. Talk to a friend. Talk to a family member. Talk to a mentor or a coach. Talk to somebody at church. Talk to a mental health professional. We have to learn how to express our emotions and how to problem solve and conflict resolution and all that stuff. And I'm still really terrible at all of these things. I'm much better at writing it out than I am at communicating it in person, but I'm learning, and it helps. Mental, anything that exercises your brain goes into this circle. YouTube, Netflix, video games, social media, none of that stuff counts. It's fine to, I don't know, just kind of disconnect from the real world once in a while. You know, we all need to participate in mindless activities once in a while. I'm not knocking that. I enjoy a good Netflix binge as much as anyone else. But this is about stretching our brains, exercising our brains, reading a book, doing a puzzle, Sudoku, crossword, word search. Even just 6 minutes of doing any of these activities does something in your brain that a neuroscientist could probably explain better than me. But it's an easy way to flip a switch if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling angry. Spiritual is the last circle that I talk about because it's the one that took me the longest to get to. But spending time on a regular basis connecting with whatever you believe in beyond yourself can help our problems feel not quite so big. Meditation is another thing that I got into with a great amount of hesitation, again, because I thought that it looked very strange. And then I started reading about how it can lower blood pressure, how it can help you manage your emotions, how it helps to alleviate symptoms of depression and anxiety. And I read that meditating for 10 minutes a day for 8 weeks can change the physical structure of your brain. That blew my mind, and I had 10 minutes every day. So I decided to give it a try. And like yoga and music, this is one of the most important parts of my daily practice. Practicing gratitude. I am not a by nature glass half full kind of guy. And I want to be better at that. I want to be more positive. I want to be more hopeful. I want to be more grateful. So I practice it. I practice it by writing down 3 things that happened every day that I was thankful for. Just write it down and throw it out. This is another simple, effective activity for flipping the switch of negativity. Just kind of retraining your brain. And on my worst days, I can find 3 things to be thankful for. Prayer, something that took me a while to get back to. I am an introvert. And these presentations terrify me. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've done hundreds of these, and every time it terrifies me. Because I know I'm going to be standing up in front of a room full of strangers and talking about the deepest, darkest, most personal parts of my life. And naturally, that's terrifying. So I pray, and I talk to my dad, and I ask him to be here with me. And I ask him to help me to remember to smile and to breathe and to be myself, so that I can do the best that I possibly can and connect with those who need it. This is how you practice mental health. One thing, each circle, every day. And it's hard work sometimes, especially if you're someone who deals with depression and anxiety. Believe me when I tell you, there are still days when it takes everything that I have just to get out of bed. But on those days, if I can start with something, just pick one activity and do it, then that might lead me to make another positive choice a little later in the day. And that might lead to another positive choice. And over time, these choices and practices become habits. And those habits help you to feel and live your best. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about happiness and what that means. And for a long time, I thought that happiness meant just constant joy, right? Which is not realistic and not possible. But I have heard that happiness properly defined is feeling content and feeling connected. And those are two feelings that I struggle with. But this is how I fight that. And when I make the commitment to do this, and when I'm following through with this on a regular and consistent basis, I am feeling my best. I am feeling my most connected, my most content. And over time, I have noticed a lot of very positive changes. Life's not perfect. Life's never going to be perfect. There will always be struggle, pain, loss. We don't control most of what happens to us, but we control our choices. So these are the choices that I try to make, and the ones that I try to make every day. And that is how you practice mental health. As I mentioned previously, music is still my number one go-to when I'm not feeling very well. And I wrote this song on a day that I wasn't feeling very well, and I wanted to feel better. And it's called I Will Not Go Quietly. It's inspired by one of my favorite poems, and I hope you like it. I will not go quietly into the night. Gonna keep on searching, gonna keep up the fight. If I grow weary, I'll just close my eyes. I will not go quietly into the night. Other people's houses always felt like home. After all of these years, I'm still on my own. But it's always darkest before the light. I will not go quietly into the night. It's so hard to believe when it all falls apart at the seams. It's so hard to believe just to keep chasing all of your dreams when you've wasted half your life trying to keep up with that other guy, 'cause he's got it much better than you, and all you want is enough to get by. But I will not go quietly into the night. Gonna keep on searching, gonna keep up the fight. If I grow weary, I'll just close my eyes. I will not go quietly into the night. I'm still in this house, I'm still in this hole. I still haven't shed my skin. I'm tired of this town and tired of this weight. So sick of the middle I'm in. It's so hard to believe when it all falls apart at the seams. It's so hard to believe just to keep chasing all of your dreams. I will not go quietly into the night. Gonna keep on searching, keep up the fight. And if I grow weary, I'll just close my eyes. I will not go quietly into the night. I will not go quietly into the night. Thank you very much, everybody.